Ahoy there, chummers, and welcome to The Sixth World, the show where we wade through a river of dreck to get at the chipped truth of the Shadowrun universe. My name's Happy, and on today's episode, we're going to take a look at one of the landmark Supreme Court cases of the late 20th century, the Ceretech Decision. In the world of Shadowrun, the Megacorps are king. These titans of industry are sovereign entities unto themselves and have accumulated enough power, wealth, and weaponry to be able to challenge traditional nation states. The Megacorps' power is damn near limitless. What they want, they take, or they simply buy outright. The old superpowers are dead and gone, and corporate greed has risen to take their place. But how did the Megacorps become the most powerful entities in the Sixth World? To answer that question, we'll have to go back in time to the absolute chaos that marked the end of the millennium. Picture this, chummers. It's the close of the 20th century and everything has gone to hell in a handbasket. Resources have become so scarce that food and fuel shortages are now commonplace even in developed nations. Civil unrest sweeps across the planet like a plague as every single day brings a fresh new hell for a desperate populace, and your government is either unable or unwilling to stem the tide of violence and focuses solely on protecting the country's elites. How does one survive such a topsy-turvy world? Well, if you're a corporation, the answer, of course, is build your own damn army. The corporate world of the late 20th century had been looking on with growing horror as the impending societal collapse threatened critical assets and infrastructure. Government and law enforcement officials were, by and large, too incompetent, too corrupt, or just plain too overwhelmed to effectively protect corporate holdings. As a result, corporations began to build their own private armies. These professional corporate soldiers would be tasked with defending their corporation's assets and personnel with lethal force if necessary. Corporate holdings in the Third World were the first to be militarized, which is a logical first step when you think about it. The Third World was bearing the brunt of the violence, and the Corps would naturally want to ensure their most vulnerable assets were secured first. Lax or non-existent regulatory oversight meant the Corps could project overt displays of force and repel any potential aggressors with the maximum amount of lethal force possible. The First World was a whole other story. Developed nations such as the United States and much of Europe eyed these growing corporate armies with increasing alarm. Government officials in these countries worried that these corporate armies, or private corporate security forces, as the Corps PR firms would call them, would grow to the point where corporations could challenge their sovereignty. So far, this state of affairs had amounted to nothing more than governments and corporations warily eyeing each other from their respective camps, but the situation would spiral out of control with an explosive event in New York City. In late 1998, the New York Teamsters Union would initiate a strike. Why? Well, better wages, better working conditions, better benefits. The reasons don't matter, chummer. What matters is the result, and the result was a strike that halted all shipments into the city. Food and fuel were becoming scarce as the New York City government hastily negotiated a new contract with the Teamsters Union. Unfortunately, the union's membership refused to accept the terms of the new contract, and hundreds were killed and thousands injured as food riots swept the city for months. Fast forward to February 21st, 1999. The food riots that had devastated large swaths of New York City were still ongoing, and the situation deteriorated as the NYPD was stretched to the breaking point and beyond. Roving mobs had looted storefronts and attacked any and all cargo transports in a desperate attempt to avoid starvation. Transports owned by the Ceretech Corporation were a common target, as prior to the strike, it had been Ceretech trucks that handled most of the city's food shipments. It was in the evening hours that one such mob attacked a refrigerated Ceretech truck moving through Staten Island. Unfortunately for this mob, this particular Ceretech truck wasn't transporting food as they had hoped, but was hauling infectious biomedical waste to a research facility in New Jersey. The mob managed to corner the Ceretech truck, and the employees inside were forced to hold off the desperate rioters as they radioed their facility for assistance. Ceratec security forces responded and cleared the way for the truck. The mob pursued, and Ceretec's employees were forced into a run-and-gun battle all the way back to the research facility. I'd like to say that the battle ended when the truck rolled into that facility. I'd like to say that the pitiful fraggers in the mob gave up and went home to their families. That would, however, be a lie, and remember, Chummer, we are all about the chip truth here. The mob laid siege to the facility, and Ceretech security forces responded in kind. I'll leave it to your imagination as to what that would entail. When dawn broke the next day, the NYPD had finally responded to the situation and cleared the crowd, but not before over 200 rioters and 20 Ceretech employees had been killed. The government's response was swift and legally brutal. The U.S. Department of Justice saw the Ceretech incident as an opportunity to quash growing corporate military might within America's borders and charged the Ceretech Corporation with criminal negligence. The government's case focused on two factors. First, that the decision to transport the medical waste during a riot was negligent, and second, that Ceretech had decided to move the truck to their New Jersey facility when it came under fire rather than seeking assistance from the local police forces, which also added to the climate of negligence surrounding the event. The trial court found Ceretech Corporation guilty on all counts. Of course, Ceretech swiftly appealed the decision, and the Second Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the conviction. Now, in its decision, the Second Circuit Court stated that the consequences of any and all actions taken by a corporation were in fact the responsibility of that corporation. The court further argued that because the state had authorized Ceretech to transport hazardous waste, they had effectively authorized the shipment on February 21st. Not only that, the state's authorization had made Ceretech liable to take all necessary measures to protect the shipment. It would have been negligent to do otherwise. The corporation had a continuous responsibility to do everything in its power to protect the shipment the second that truck rolled off the lot, up to and including the use of deadly force. Now, this continuity of responsibility principle quickly became known as the first bullet principle. Legal experts at the time explained that based on this first bullet principle, Ceretech Corporation could have sent all of its security forces from all 50 states to literally empty their magazines into the crowd in an effort to defend that truck, and they would have been completely justified in doing so. Ain't life a bitch, chummers? Naturally, the U.S. government couldn't let such a decision stand and appealed the Second Circuit Court's decision. The case was fast-tracked to the Supreme Court in late 1999. The government had hoped the Supreme Court would issue a condemnation of Ceretech and its actions, but they were sorely disappointed when Chief Justice Terrence Ordell issued a 193-page decision upholding the Second Circuit Court's decision. However, the Supreme Court's decision would go beyond the Second Circuit Court's ruling. Citing Santa Clara County v. Southern Pacific Railroad, 1886, which established corporations as moral persons with constitutional rights, the Supreme Court ruled that corporate security forces qualified as a well-regulated militia under the Second Amendment. In other words, corporations had the constitutional right to raise armed security forces in order to defend their personnel and property. Chief Justice Ordell went even further and actually praised Ceretech for defending the public from the contamination that would have resulted had the waste been released. Now, Chief Justice Ordell's decision would come to be known as the Ceretech Decision, and the ramifications of this ruling would be felt in the next year when it would be used together with the Shiawase Decision to form the basis of corporate extraterritoriality and help create the world that we know today. So remember, Ome, that CorpSec has the constitutional right to blast you with all the bullets they want the next time you decide to take a not-so-covert jaunt through their private property. But that's the sixth world for you, eh? And that's the chip truth, chummers. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more Shadowrun content. Hit that notification bell so you will always know when I upload a brand new Shadowrun video, and until next time, remember to shoot straight and never, ever deal with a dragon.